Good morning, everyone in Lahore. I'm very happy to be part of this international conference. I'm Professor Rekha Pandey from the University of Hyderabad in India. I am very glad that all of you are today discussing on gender issues and especially related to a South Asian perspective on feminism. So what I'm going to speak is I'm going to talk about South Asian perspective on feminism with special focus on India. Over the world, when we look at it, there is a very close relationship between feminism and women's movement because each has inspired the other. When we talk of feminism, any basic definition of feminism or feminisms can start with the assertion that at the center of feminism is the concern for women's subordinate status in society with the discrimination encountered by women because of their sex. Today, when we look at the 21st century, we have enough reasons to be proud of our unique achievements. From stepping into the moon of cloning of genes, bringing longevity to lifespan, fighting diseases, there has been a long list of achievement in science and technology. So many people think that, feminism is not even relevant today. It may have been necessary 100 years back where women could not vote, they lacked legal power, and they were strongly discouraged from working outside the home. Today, women are a significant voting bloc. They have gained power, and there are many CEOs in the company. So people ask, what is the equality that we are looking for? In spite of all these, we find that women still face a lot of obstacles when compared to men. And overcoming these obstacles require a kind of feminist perspective, and feminism therefore continues to be relevant, and we really need to give a lot of support to these kinds of movement. When we are talking of movements like Million Women Rise, the Me Too campaign, women have marched, they have campaigned around different issues. So today we see a new phase. In fact, I can call it the fourth wave of feminism, where there is a lot of activism, both dynamic and creative. And therefore, feminism becomes very relevant in the face of all these development. And we need to really look at all the challenges which women face in social, political, and economic areas. When I talk of South Asia is home to one-fifth of the world's population, consisting of India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan, Maldives, and the British India Ocean territories. We have a civilization which is more than 5,000 years old. It has hosted different cultures. It has created a land with diverse belief where the modern concerns mesh with the traditional values. And yet, this region has seen a lot of conflict, political instability. There has also been wars between the region's two nuclear states, India and Pakistan. All of us have experienced colonialism, where we were subjugated, and India got its independence only later on. Now, because of our experiences of colonialism and exploitation, we have not been able to keep up with the development of capitalism in the world. And yet, in spite of that, we see that today this region is characterized by a high economic growth. And yet, poverty is also a reality of a large population. In spite of globalization and modernization, what characterizes South Asian region is the hold of traditional values and cultures over people and families, which are very patriarchal. Family members have different power in the family relationship depending on their gender, role, and status. So we have to really look at this from this kind of perspective. Today, we have ushered in liberalization of economics. There has been a forced structural adjustment, climate chaos, criminalization of indigenous and lower caste population, and yet there has also been rapid technological changes. And South Asian women are one group that faces multiple intersection oppression depending on class, caste, religious location. And when we look at India in the 19th century, we find that the Britishers were criticizing us because we were not treating our women properly. We had so many issues like child marriage, illiteracy, sati, treatment of widows. And therefore, at this time, we had a massive social reform movement which emerged. It was led by Raja Ram Mohan Roy of the Brahmo Samaj, Dayanand Saraswati of the Arya Samaj, Justice Ranade, the pioneer of Pratna Samaj, and Pandita Ramabai, who founded the Sharda Sadan. The colonial state also played its part because a number of laws were passed which outlawed, sati, widow remarriage, female infanticide, special marriage acts was passed, age of consent was raised to 12. Child marriage restraint act was passed, and women got limited right to property. Yet in spite of this, we find that there is so much of a gap between the law and how it is implemented. So after India became independent, we find that unlike the women in the West, women got the right to vote. Women became equal partners in development. Yet in the 90s and 60s, there was a spate of movement in which women took part. There were campaigns against rising prices, movement for land rights, present movements, etc. And women from all over the country came together. They participated in these movements, transforming the movement from within. But the whole myth of equality for women was shattered by the path breaking towards equality report that was published in 1974. It focused attention on the fact that despite many progressive social legislation and constitutional guarantees, women's status had really not improved much, and women continue to be a lot of in a lot of deodorant. We have facing so many crises today that we will our major problem is that there is the situation of the unwanted girl child. And if you look at the national trend, we see that there is such an adverse ratio. In 1901, for every 1,000 boys, we had 972 girls. By the time we come to 2011, there were only 914 girls for 1,000 boys. In fact, to be born female comes closer to being born less than human. Discrimination begins even before birth. There is reluctance to seek medical aid. Girls are fed for a shorter duration than boys. They are easily withdrawn from school to look after their siblings. Gender roles are conceived and taught and enacted in a very complex set of relationships within the family and society. So the girl child grows with a very low esteem. She has this notion that she's only a temporary member in her natal home and has to be disposed of with assets and properties. If you look at some of the proverbs today, they tell us of this bias. There is a proverb in Telangana which says, bringing up a daughter is like watering a plant in someone else's garden. If you tell lies, you will have a daughter. A daughter is like a ghee, clarified butter. Both are good to a point, and you need to dispose them off before they start stinking. So, these biases continue. Girls are seen as chattel to be disposed of. Now, she is only regarded as a sojourner in her natal family. And what we find is, besides this, another major phenomena is we have early marriages in India. Today, nearly 50% of the girls are married before they attain the legal age of 18. In fact, United Nations list India stands fourth in this regard with a tie-up with Bangladesh. It is Niger which heads the list. We did have a Child Marriage Restraint Act which was passed under the colonial government. Again, in 1978, the minimum age of marriage for girls was 18. But in spite of this, there was a punishment given that the parents will be punished for 3 months, the boy would be imprisoned for 15 days and a fine of 1,000 rupees was fixed. Yet, this has hardly been respected, and many child marriages, at least in rural areas, continue. A large number of girls drop out of school because they are so much engaged in domestic and child care activities. Another thing which is very important is that in Asian cultures, we have defined masculinity at the expense of women. So a man's honor rests in women. The worst hit in a caste war and communal clashes are women. And in many of these societies, women do not have property rights. And so they are easy targets. In fact, if you look at the life expectancy of men when compared to women, it is the worst in South Asia. In South Asia, women live only 1 year more than men, which is the lowest in any region. Because by and large, women have a genetic biological advantage which makes them more resistant to infection and malnutrition. In developed countries, the life expectancy is 7 times more than that of men. And again, women face so much violence. In fact, every day when you look at it in the newspapers, in the television, we hear so much of violence against women that it has almost become like a statistics. You have violence at home, in public spaces, in state, even in families. And we find that, another major issue is trafficking of women, because a lot of money is generated through trafficking. There are scholars who say, the largest amount of money generated is through arms trade and drugs. And in these cases, when the person is convicted, they are the ones who are put behind bars. And yet, in trafficking, the person goes scot free, and it is only the women who are put behind bar. Today, globalization has changed in a large number of ways. We find that women have also been benefited by it, and yet we find that women have raised a lot of questions related to development from a feminist perspective. They have raised issues of childcare, reproductive rights, violence against women, family planning, transfer of technology, rural development, and they have given the whole concept of development a new meaning from a feminist perspective. Development has to be an integral process with economic, social, and cultural aspect, leading to a control of one's life situation. And here is it where we come across the concept of empowerment. And therefore, whether we look at it in the context of India or even South Asian perspective, we find that in spite of many challenges to feminism, it remains very relevant. Gender equality is necessary for the future of the world. We need to listen to voices of women from different cultural backgrounds that are calling for culturally located response to patriarchy and men's domination. Feminism has to be localized and particularized, but it must be essentially recognized as a very important part of an interdependent world. Thank you very much.